Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, Coach Steve. We have a very special edition for you guys today, away from our normal weekly podcast. As I mentioned on Monday, we are doing some risers and fallers from the NFL Combine. With me today, I have a special guest here, Steve. He works with me over at the Dynasty Nerds. What's going on, buddy?
How's it going?
Well, welcome to the show. How was your experience down at the NFL Combine? I know we just talked about it, but for the guests and everyone who's listening in, tell us your experience, man.
Yeah, it was a blast. So I headed down to the Combine with Nerds. I ended up going with another writer, Dustin Ledecky, and it was super nice. So basically, what a quick recap, what a day would entail would be wake up around like 6:30 or so to get to press conferences at 7-ish, depending on the day. And then you kind of just plan out, there would be 3 or so groups by positions. And it would be the position that's going to compete the next day at the Combine. So say running backs were going, Sunday? They do press conferences Saturday, and that's how the schedule will work. But basically, I was there, getting some interviews and everything for the Nerds Twitter and whatnot. So if you guys follow me at Steve Bradshaw FF and the Nerds, you guys would have definitely saw that. But after interviews, we had a little time to chill. There was a nice media workroom where you could just get all those clips posted up and whatnot. And then after that, you head to the field for 5-6 hours from around, depending on the day, it was either like 1 to 8, 1 to 7, or 3 to 8 or 9. So pretty much every day was like 7 to 9, but it was an absolute blast. Got to meet with a ton of other cool people that also work in the fantasy community, like guys from DLF. I met like Cam Newton's videographer. It was just all over the place, super sick. So yeah, definitely tiring and a lot of work, but it was a blast, and I loved every second of it.
Awesome, love it. Who was your favorite player that you interviewed?
I gotta go Bijan just because. So I ended up running. Offensive linemen were doing the interviews before, so they were in like the first group earlier time. So I camped out at Bijan's podium for the offensive lineman that was going before him for like a half hour, 45 minutes, just so I could get in the front row. And then hopefully, when everyone was talking, since I was like right there, he'd look at me, answer my question. And he ended up answering my question, which is so cool to be so close to him and get that eye contact, But there was a bunch of cool guys. I really liked talking to Jordan Addison too. Jahmyr Gibbs was fun. And yeah, there was a few tight ends I talked to. I talked to Kincaid, talked to Laporta, talked to Tajay Spears. Tajay Spears was a good interview, even though I didn't really get to go to as much of that as I would have liked, but he was really funny from what I saw. So yeah, I talked to 10 or so guys, but I'd probably say Bijan was the most memorable for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had Dan from the Dynasty Nerds on. He went down to the Senior Bowl and he was telling me his experience. So I'm getting real jealous that I haven't gone to one of these events like this. It's gonna have to be 2024 for me. But like I said, we brought you on tonight's show so you could give us some of your risers and fallers that you saw at the Combine. So I think we should start with some risers. Let's start off with a good note and give us your first riser you have.
All right. So first off is a guy that isn't quite as notable going in, but we got Darnell Washington, the tight end from Georgia. I thought he was fantastic, and just seeing him in person, there was a ton of buzz around him. As you guys can see on the screen, these measurements were absolutely off the charts. I think he had a near perfect RAS. I believe it was 9.95 or something along that. All these tight ends tested amazing. But just seeing him up in person, You had that viral one-handed catch on that fade route. Everything about his game just looks so smooth. And while he hasn't been an elite talent in college necessarily, um, I think he's more of a project type tight end that needs to clean up a lot of aspects in his game. But when you see it in person, you can tell that the talent's there. And sitting right next to, you kind of got the general feeling with the scouts were like in the rows, like next to us. They were decently far away, but you could still hear like if they were up or down on the player for the most part. I thought there was a ton of buzz against around Washington, where probably out of the tight end group who was fantastic all around. So Washington's a guy rising up draft boards for me. And since I don't really see tight ends producing in year one a ton of the time anyway, I don't really see it as a big deal that he may not give you immediate production year one in the NFL. But I really think he can be a stud in the long term, and it's dynasty, so that's why you should really draft him for that long term value.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, this definitely was a guy that I was happy you brought up. That I did like him a lot in terms of just the quality of tight ends. We have a lot of great pass catching tight ends in this class here, and he might not be the biggest producer in terms of production in that way in college, but his measurements and obviously what he's able to do, the combine kind of stand out a little bit there. And if he goes in that first, maybe late first, early second round, is he considered, in the tight end premium leagues, like almost an early second round pick for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd really have him right around so I have Mayer and Kincaid still ahead of him. I feel like they've just produced at a whole nother level in college and are still great athletes. But I really have Mayer and Kincaid back to back. So if he gets that elite draft capital, I could see him even going back to back to back or like a few picks behind him, depending on like what team he goes to.
Yeah, I think the team he goes to is going to be pretty big for his value overall. I mean, there's a lot of needy tight end teams that are going to need someone like the Packers, the Dolphins, the Bengals, some other teams that might have that second round pick they might want to use on that. And I think that would definitely raise his overall dynasty value for the long run to be in any one of those offenses that love to throw the ball. So definitely, I love this one here a lot. So give us your second riser in this combine.
So second, I'm going to go the more obvious one, Anthony Richardson, who just had an absolutely electric combine. I mean, what more is there really to say besides his 40 time you saw, 4.43, fastest by a quarterback since 2003, 10-yard split, which just shows his explosiveness. Vertical and broad jump, I'm really not as, I don't think it'll translate to the NFL 40 time well necessarily, but it just kind of shows how athletic he really is. Everyone's saying oh, Anthony Richardson is a freak athlete. I mean, you kind of just confirmed it with the vertical and broad jump measurements, which were both NFL quarterback records. But yeah, he looked phenomenal. There was so much buzz around him from everybody, fans, scouts, all around. Everywhere you looked, you were hearing, "Oh, Anthony, you see Anthony Richardson? You see Anthony Richardson this?" After the combine, I believe his odds of going number one shot up at least plus 250 or so. I know he leapfrogged. Yeah, he was right neck and neck with Stroud. I think he may have even passed him right after that combine. So that was really crazy. Being there, he kind of just gave me what I expected, that elite arm talent, elite athleticism, and elite deep ball. And even though, I'm talking all good about Richardson, not necessarily bad, but you could tell that his strengths were definitely his deep ball and athleticism. And his, short routes, corner routes were not bad by any means. It's hard for really a quarterback to look terrible, when you're throwing in shorts inside. But you could definitely tell that his strengths were his deep ball, athleticism, but that's what really you're looking for in a quarterback. You can't really teach that as much as you can, that medium and short accuracy and just game sense. But he was just dropping dimes on deep balls and showing out in the 40 time. And it was just incredible to watch. And the place was going nuts when he was throwing all the time and running. So
I mean,
nice.
I don't when I was able to tune into the combine, I feel like all they talked about was Anthony Richardson and his potential and everything he did. And he's literally the poster boy of this combine this year. But I listened to one of the recent Dynasty Nerds episodes here, and they were talking about how if he's in that top 5 discussion right now in the NFL draft, that some of them would consider him as the top player in your rookie drafts. Was he what he showed you at the combine, that give you any kind of like, maybe in a super flex league, I would consider him over BJ Robinson or something like that? Did this performance at the combine do that to you at all?
Yeah, it gave me something to think about. Not necessarily because he was so much more talented than I thought. Like, it's kind of what I expected. Not to that level, obviously. No one expected him to just dominate the combine, break every athletic record for quarterbacks. But I really wasn't sure if he was going to get that top 5-10 draft capital. And when looking for a quarterback, that's my number one indicator. Since NFL GMs, it's going to guarantee you job security. NFL GMs know more than us when evaluating quarterbacks, for being honest here. So that's what I'm really looking for. And if he's a potential number 1 pick, yeah, I still may take Bijan, but it's going to be really close with all the tools he has and everything. So it was really just seeing his draft capital for sure go up. Now I know he's getting good draft capital without like the second chance that, he's going to pull Malik Willis and drop down multiple rounds. So that's what the biggest takeaway I got for the discussion in the one-on-one with Richardson was.
Yeah, no, I was like, so once I saw that, I was like, if he does go in the top 4, top 3, whatever, I think Robinson still has to be the top choice in terms of superflex leagues, the running back. I mean, Richardson the rushing upside is fantastic, but there's so much risk with him. It's just like, maybe now he's in that discussion where, where Young and Stroud will going in the 2 to 4 range for sure now, especially if he lands that top pick overall, or maybe goes to number 2 or 3. He's definitely put himself in the conversation now for sure with this combine. So another guy, obviously, it was a big riser in this combine. So, and give us your last riser of the NFL combine.
So my last riser was Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now, at first, being at the press conference where he announced that he wasn't going to run the 40, there was a lot of negative buzz around him, I'd say. At first, I'd honestly say before he did anything, his stock dropped a little bit because everyone was assuming, he's not running the combine. He must be crazy slow. But I don't think it was exactly that. I think his 40 time would have been average. He's still going to run at the pro day. Not going to look as much into that since it'll not be quite as accurate as the combine, obviously. But still, I think his goal of doing that was, I'm not going to have people knock my 40 time. I just want to show what I'm good at and going to be used at the NFL level and show out in the 3-cone drill, 20-yard shuttle, because that's his game. He's an elite slot receiver, elite slot runner. So without having that, knock that you can put on him with his 40 time, he just wanted people – because if he did run the 40 time, it probably would have overshadowed that because people would have been like, his 40 time wasn't as fast as I wanted him. Even though he did run a good 3-cone drill, I mean, he's still good, but I don't know. No, he just eliminated that, did what he was good at, and he dominated. I believe, I want to look back, he beat the second place wide receiver in the 3-cone drill by 0.28 seconds. Which is just like ridiculous. Like that's just domination. So I liked Jackson Smith and Jigba going in. I liked him even more coming out, especially with just how well he looked. And even during the drill, just watching him, he just looked smooth. He just looked like an athlete. So the concerns about maybe he's not athletic with his 40 time kind of out the window for me. I don't think he'll be as fast as, you may like him to get that outside plays as well, but not a big issue for me.
No, I would definitely respect that. I think when you look at, I like to watch film on a lot of these guys here. I think a lot of people they want to see that explosiveness in a wide receiver, just because it's what we want to see in the NFL nowadays. These very fast guys being able to run downfield and get separation that way, and he's not that type of player. He's someone who's going to beat you with his route running ability and in the short game. And his quickness in a short area, but it's not going to be with the 40. So him having that 40 time probably would have, like you said, kind of brought him down a little bit. It's just like a guy that you're going to be talking about kind of probably in the same range of a guy you're going to be talking about in a little bit in terms of his 40 time. It probably would have been somewhere similar to that. And I mean, I like him. He's my wide receiver 3 right now. I have him in the draft right now, and yeah, I think overall he should be good, and I'm sure he'll be able to run a good enough 40 to keep his stock value up to the high level. So I liked him a lot too. So all right, let's go over to some followers. Unfortunately, some guys who kind of not as high, but still high, but maybe just not the same reason here. And I gave it away. I'm sorry, but give us your first riser, Steve.
So my first follow of the combine was you're all good, yeah. It was Jordan Addison, who just really didn't have a good combine at all. He came in much lighter than we expected. I kind of thought he was going to be light, but I thought he'd get to at least 180 or so. He measured in at 173, 5'11", which is not great at all. I'm gonna throw a little statistic at you to start off with regarding that. Since 2014, the only wide receivers to weigh under 180 pounds and finish as wide receiver 24 or better is Deshaun Jackson, John Brown, and Devonta Smith. Now, a lot of people are looking at it and saying, oh, he can be Devonta Smith. Well, for one, that is just an outlandish player comp. He really played nothing like Devonta Smith in college. Devonta Smith was the best college receiver by far, and maybe of all time. He had 1,800 receiving yards, crazy stat line at Alabama, playing alongside some elite level wide receivers. So I don't think he's near Devonta Smith, and even if he is, because Devonta Smith was so recent, I think people are going to overlook that because of recency bias. But Deshaun Jackson and John Brown are field stretchers. Doesn't really fit that at all. So I think he's still a good player, and I still have him up there. He's my wide receiver 3 or so, depending on landing spot. But I think if you're going to say completely disregard that, I think that's a mistake because you got to have more risk in Addison than you did before. Overall, he just didn't measure well at all. Going back to, RAS, which is combining his 40-time vertical jump, size, broad jump, all that. He had a 5.82, which on a scale from 1 to 10 is not great at all, especially when you had a bunch of these guys, showing out and getting high numbers and boosting their draft stock. Before this, he was also projected high in first pick. On Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft, he had him going to the 12th to the Texans, I believe. So I'm not sure if teams are going to view him the same when he's a small wide receiver who's not very fast. I don't really know if he's going to get that first round draft capital anymore. I still think he's going to go early second. I don't think we're talking fall down draft boards to the 3rd round or so. But I definitely say you have to be a lot more concerned about Addison after the combine than you were heading in.
Yeah, no, definitely. I said I have him at 2 right now, and I'm not comfortable with that. To be honest, I don't like a lot of these wide receivers in this rookie class here. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we get 2 wide receivers drafted in the first round. I feel like half of them are just either they're very small or they're just very light. And I feel like that's just a bad recipe for wide receiver in general. I mean, we've seen guys, I think, over the last few years, like, the Rondale Moores, the Sky Moores, the smaller guys who were like, if they get open, they're going to be great. It was like, well, they're just not being used in the same capacity in their offenses. And I feel like a lot of these wide receivers, and Addison kind of falls in that for me too. It's just like, it's very concerning. I feel like he's going to have to end up in the right situation to be really good. So I like this one as a follow here. I don't like your next one, but this one I like this as a follow right now too, because I feel like I'm gonna have to bring him down a couple spots on my ranking. So, but give us your next follower.
So my next follower is Tank Bigsby. I know there's kind of a lot of different opinions on Tank Bigsby, and I'm not a huge fan of him coming in. I'm not as big of a hater as some people. I think he's all right. But I really think that he hasn't proven as much as I'd like in college. And for one, his weight and size were not exactly what I was looking for. I assumed he'd be a bigger back, as he kind of had that prototype in college, especially being able to catch the ball. I actually liked him a decent amount. What I was looking for was for him to have a really good combine to, make up for some of those concerns we had coming in. But he measured in with a 28.5 BMI, which isn't exactly very good for a guy looking to be a 3-down back. You kind of want to be more around that 29.5, 30.5 range. So besides his 10-yard split, which was very good, I'll talk about that, given the positive. That's good because that measures burst. I think he could be used in a way like that as just a maybe really good first or second down runner if he gets to that capacity and gets coached up. But his 40 time was not good, and none of his other measurements showing his athleticness were really good at all. Ended up with a 7.53 RAS overall. So you really don't love to see that. And before that, he was also a projected fourth round pick according to NFL mock draft database. So I know that's all over the place. We're going to get a better idea once we get closer to the draft, but I'm really not as comfortable drafting a guy with fourth round draft capital as I am grabbing a guy who's late second, early third, because they have a little more job security. As we've seen time and time again, these running backs later in the draft, if there's a guy that they really like in the next class, you see with James Robinson, for example. I know he was much later, but even so, as the rounds get later on, your job security just goes out the window. So that's not really something I was looking for Tank. So to your point, I'm not exactly sure he had a terrible combine, and I understand why you'd still like Tank. But for me, I was looking for Tank to have a good combine and push him up rankings. And for me, he didn't. He really didn't show anything special at all. And I think that made him slide slightly down rankings. Not my biggest faller as terms of Addison. Addison, I felt like slid a lot more. But I think he definitely fell down my rankings a little bit due to a rather underwhelming combine, I'll say.
Yeah, no, I can see that a lot there. I mean, there are definitely some parts of Tank's game that, people were concerned about. And I think people were looking for a reason to buy into him more, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that like someone like me, I like Tank a lot, that he just didn't prove it to give you that next level. And I think, Steve, I think that's what you're kind of looking for from him. And he just didn't give it to you, unfortunately. I mean, where do you have him right now? Do you have your rankings for your RBs?
I don't have Tank. I couldn't give you an exact number, but he's not. I'd say he's in my tier 3 or 4.
Okay.
I have him probably around maybe Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker actually rose a little bit for me, so I have him probably around my RB 7-ish. I could see him going 6 or 8 either way, but I'd say that's average right now. I need to finalize those. Definitely. I think I'll be coming out with that this weekend.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I had him at 4. I did move him down to 5 because of the combine. I still love him a lot. I still think if he lands with the right team that needs a running back, and it's maybe, like you said, late second, early or mid, anytime in the third round, if he happens to fall there, to me, he's going to probably be a late first round pick for me. And if he can get that starting job, or at least getting the majority of the work in any offense, so I do like his ability. I want him to be a 3-down back. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But yeah, I definitely like Tank Bigsby a lot. So, all right, let's go over to your last and final faller. Who do you got?
All right, last I got Kayshon Boutte. I mean, anyone watching the combine, I think, kind of could agree with this. Boutte was, he has a ton of off the field issues and question marks in the first place. So he was kind of a guy that, even more than Tank, I can't even really compare the two. He really needed to have a good combine because, you kind of have to offset for all that, off the field issues, not proving yourself as much, as he really hasn't broke out his freshman year, got a lot of people excited. And then since then, it's just been really average. And he was just not athletic really at all during the combine. I mean, you can see he ran a 4.5 40, broad jump, not great, shuttle, all right, vertical jump, not good. So he just really didn't wow anyone and kind of was disappointing athletic wise, and running drills and everything. He wasn't the guy that you were like, wow, that's the flashes I've seen on tape from Boutte. No, it was just, I mean, he just looked like another guy out there. And that's not what you're looking to see, especially when, for me, he was the guy that had the most to prove because of how much uncertainty there is surrounding him, and he just did not do that at all for me. And I'm not sure if he was a projected around second round pick, second, third. I'm not sure he'll in the NFL draft. I'm not sure he'll get there at all. I could see him dropping down to the fourth round even. And
Yeah,
I'm not sure where that puts him in rookie drafts. I've seen him fall as far as like early third round now after the combine.
yeah. No, I honestly, I just finished watching film on him recently. I just did my evaluation on him. I did not see what people were seeing in him at all, and I had to go back and because like the film I was able to find, there wasn't too much on it, and I was like, why is he higher on some of these rankings than I? And I went back and looked at some stuff, and I always like to look at like at the end, I like to look at some like hype tape. I was like, well, give me some hype tape to kind of like bring me back to see what I'm missing out of all the film I've watched. And then he's like a 300-yard game. I was like, he had a 300-yard game? Like, what? And I was like, oh, that was his freshman year. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I look back, I was like, he's done nothing since then. Like, why is this? I mean, watching that game, I was like, oh wow, he comes off fast, but the game film you watch now, he looks slow out there. He just looks like a big, slow guy. And it's just really strange. And it must be the injury or just the way the offense is running. But I didn't like him. So I like that you had him as a follow here. He's probably not going to be in my top 12 wide receiver rankings, at least for right now. I mean, he's, I think, at number 9. I'm not finished yet, but he's probably going to drop more because I think there's a couple guys I do like. But yeah, I like your pick on this guy here. So. But before we do wrap up the show, let me ask you one more question here. I didn't ask you beforehand, but is there one player that you really want people to be buying into, just in a general sense? Anyone that you really like that you want people to know about?
Honestly, so I'd probably have to say Will Levis, to be honest. Now I know, Levis is maybe not the most popular guy by any means in Dynasty. I feel like he's kind of being overshadowed. I feel like him and Richardson were like neck and neck in the combine, kind of just skyrocketed Richardson to a whole nother tier. And I think that's fair, but I thought Levis had a pretty good combine as well. I still think he's going to be maybe a 9th overall pick, which is amazing, top 10 pick. If he's not, I think he's going to get really good draft capital. And I think he has a ton of potential too. And I feel like he's honestly more NFL ready now than Richardson. And also one thing I've noticed was he kind of talked about that he wasn't moving and running as much last year just due to the scheme. And he also was injured his junior year. So it was kind of a combination of both. But he has that ability. So if he gets into the right NFL team, I think he can provide some good rushing upside as well. Maybe not that Anthony Richardson had the upside, but, getting 30, 40 rushing yards a game, boosting to a whole nother tier, that adds up. So Levis is someone I'd really be advocating for. I've seen him go at like the 107, 108 now, and in a super flex format. You're getting a very talented quarterback who, that's if he gets like top 10 draft capital or close to that. I love that pick there. I'd really like Levis at the 107, 108 if he gets top 10 draft capital. I feel like that's one of the best values in the draft.
Yeah, no, I like that there. I think because of the combine with Richardson, I think Levis has dropped down. I feel like a lot of people to like their 4th quarterback and stuff, but I feel like he might be like the safest of the bunch there because I feel like there are glaring issues with some of the other guys. Obviously, Richardson, young in his size. I think just Stroud and overall, being an Ohio State quarterback, there's just some demons there in the NFL. So I feel like Levis is just like, he's just not being talked about. He's probably going to be a top 10 pick. And if you're right, if he ends up in that 7-8 range in your rookie drafts, you're set. I mean, I feel like you're going to get yourself a really good quarterback. And likely the Raiders offense, the Panthers offense, who they have some weapons there that probably add more over the next 2 seasons. So, yeah, I like that one there a lot. So we're going to wrap up tonight's show. Steve, man, that was a pleasure having you on, man. That was a lot of fun talking some of the rises and follows with you. If there's anything you want to mention, maybe some things you're working on over at Dynasty Nerds or wherever, I'll give you the floor now.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. It was a blast talking about, my combine experience, rises and falls, all that. You can just follow me on Twitter at Steve Bradshaw FF. As Steve said, I work for Dynasty Nerds, and hopefully I'm going to be posting some more social media content. And so I'll just give you a sneak peek into what I have coming up. obviously after the draft, I'm going to be finalizing and working on some overall top 24 dynasty rankings, which I've done pre-combine, and now I want to do post-combine. And then hopefully in the long term, a little sneak peek. I haven't really talked about this to anyone. I'm hopefully going to be doing a. So our team has a top one. We have with the Nerd Herd subscription, we have the rankings, overall rankings. So I'm going to be trying doing like my top like 150 players overall. And I know that's going to take a long time with projects, but my goal like differentiate is I'm going to be breaking that up into tiers overall, and then I'm also going to be just sliding it into like quarterback tier, running back tier, wide receiver, tight end tier, just so it kind of have a different perspective in the nerds community. And then I also have just easier to find with all those tiers and everything, and just organized. So that's kind of what's going on with me. So be on the lookout for that in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. No, like I said, guys, everyone, please give Steve a follow for sure. Please check out his work over at Dynasty Nerds. I'm in there, so I see him doing things a lot very often. So, again, guys, appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll be back, obviously, over on Monday for our normal show. We'll likely be doing a Dynasty Startup mock. So check that out. We'll be back Monday, 5:30. And of course, we'll be tuning in constantly throughout the next 2 weeks with all the free agency and news and stuff going on. So as always, we'll have things posted over on Twitter at Coaches Fantasy. And if you guys ever need me, obviously I'm over at Coach Stephen P. Happy to help you out at any time. So we thank you guys all for listening. Tune in until next time and have a good